Greetings, Oracle Database fans. This is Justin, and in this Oracle Database YouTube video tutorial, I'm going to discuss Sqlplus settings. Now, what is Sqlplus? Well, Sqlplus is a program that's been shipped for years with the Oracle Database software product, and it's going to continue to be shipped. It's a standard. It's recommended at every DBA, at every level. Be familiar with it and understand it. To learn more about Sqlplus, check out the numerous Sqlplus videos I have on YouTube. So check out my Oracle channel for those. Now, what is Sqlplus exactly? Well, SQL stands for Structured Query Language, and Structured Query Language is a standard for communicating and manipulating a database. More specifically, an RDBMS product, software products. RDBMS stands for Relational Database Management System. So it's just SQL is just not for Oracle. It's a standard for any database product. Now, Sqlplus is specifically the product developed by Oracle, maintained by Oracle, and shipped with Oracle software by default. Okay. Now, free of charge too. It comes with the software. It's an Oracle Home/bin. Okay. Sqlplus is used by DBAs to administer the Oracle database and to perform Oracle-specific database maintenance, and to also perform SQL select queries and to modify the database data with updates, SQL statements, and things of that nature. It is also used to run PL/SQL programs, okay, which is the programming language built into an Oracle database for DBAs and users. Okay, now there are more modern, you'll notice that Sqlplus we use in all of our videos just about, by the way, and Sqlplus has an SQL prompt, which you're probably familiar with. And there are some, Sqlplus is a command line utility. There are more modern utilities such as SQL Developer, which comes free, and you can download from the Oracle website. And this is a graphical, a GUI interface with windows and buttons and OKs and cancel buttons, all that other good stuff, which any command you can issue in Sqlplus, you can issue in SQL Developer. Okay, so you can definitely do that as well. All right, but this focuses on Sqlplus, but more specifically, Sqlplus options, what they are. So let's go ahead and let's set our Oracle SID to the Oracle database, which is version 11G release 2, which is running on our Windows Vista Lenovo laptop. So let's go ahead and set Oracle SID to finance, which is our database, and let's ensure that our variable is set properly, which it is, finance, and let's connect to our finance database via the Sqlplus command. And we issued Sqlplus command by just typing in Sqlplus. That's the name of the executable, the program, and /sysdba or options or clauses. Okay, to say we want to connect as a special privileged user in a DBA. Now, if we do show user in Sqlplus, we will see that we're connected as user sys. If we do select name from the $ database, we will see that we're connected to the finance database. So now, let's talk about Sqlplus options. What are they? Well, Sqlplus options typically are only, don't confuse that with database options or instance options or parameters of the database in the P file. That's not what I'm talking about. That's a whole other, they're set at a whole other level, and they're a whole other discussion. This is just the settings in Sqlplus, the program, and more specifically, just the settings for SQL, for the Sqlplus, for the specific Sqlplus program session that you're connected to. So, to go ahead and show all the settings, you type in the command show. Sorry, I apologize. Show all. Show all will show you all the settings. Okay, set by default or is currently set for your Sqlplus session. Okay, so we have auto commits off, we have auto parents off, we have auto trace off. Okay, so everything that can be set with an Sqlplus set command, which I'll show you in a second, is shown here. Okay, and these are either the current settings or they are the default settings. And here we are. SQL prompt is set here. SQL number. So we have a lot of things here that we can set. Let's go over some of the options here. To display now, the show all command, as you just saw, shows you all the options. which are either currently set or are the default sentence, okay, of your set commands. Now, to show just a specific setting, you could type in show spool, for instance, and it will say spool off. Okay, and here's spool off in the all output. You could do show SQL code, and it will show 0. You can do show SQL number, and it will tell you what that specific Sqlplus setting is set to. Now let's take a look at some of the settings here. Let's take SQL number, for instance. I'm not going to go over all of them, obviously, so just double reference the Oracle Sqlplus reference book, which you can find, reference manual, which you can find in the support documentation pages of the Oracle database website. They're free PDFs you can download, or you could view them on a website in HTML format, and they should tell you about all these options. Okay, there's a lot of other books too that can show these, that will talk about these as well. So let's talk about SQL number. Okay, how do we set that from on to off? Now, on is the default. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means a continuation number. What we mean by that is, let's say you say select name from. We're not done yet, okay, right here, because we didn't put a semicolon, okay? So if we put so you see it gets numbered, line 2, line 3. Now, as soon as we put a semicolon, remember, a semicolon terminates an SQL command in Sqlplus. Okay, so we do select name from, we hit enter, the Sqlplus interpreter did not come across a semicolon, so it assumes that this is going to be a multi-line select statement, which a lot of them are. So it's going to put the number 2 and let you enter more data, and if you don't put and if it doesn't find a semicolon at the end of the second line, then it's going to add another line until it finds a semicolon, or you hit enter twice. Okay, so now that we hit the semicolon, it should execute this this command, which will error out because the command was wrong. But here, I'll show you this, and now it works. Okay, so SQL looks at the first line, looks for a semicolon terminator, doesn't find it, gives you another chance to write output, and it sees that it does have a semicolon. So its semicolon tells Sqlplus to send this to the SQL engine, in Oracle for execution, and then it displays the result set of that execution. Okay, so let's say we wanted to turn off those numbers. Well, we just say you show SQL number. We see it's currently on, which is the default. We can say set SQL number off. Okay, so it's set the Sqlplus setting and then the value. Now when we do a show SQL number, we will see that it's changed from on to off. So now when we do a select name from, and we see that and even though we didn't include a semicolon to indicate to Sqlplus that we're ready for our SQL statement to be executed, it did not show us number 2 like it did up here. It just gave us our SQL prompt back, which can be confusing. So $database, we just type in semicolon because we know that we need to finish our statement, and it executes. Okay, so even though the semicolon was omitted here, okay, and by default it would give us a number saying, hey, continue your Sqlplus statement, it doesn't matter. It's still going to show us SQL prompt because we turned off SQL number. Okay, now to turn it back on, you type in set SQL number on, show SQL number. It's on, and now when we do our select and we don't have a semicolon to terminate the select statement, it's going to put start putting numbers here until we do from the database. Now another way to SQL number off. Another way to set it back to its show SQL number. Another way to set it back to its default is, remember, these settings are just per Sqlplus session. Another way to set it back to its default is to just simply log off and log back on. So we see that we changed the SQL number from its default on value to off. But if we quit out Sqlplus and then we start another Sqlplus session, and then type in show SQL number, we will see that it's set to default on. Let's take a look at some more options. Select name from $database. Select, I have a better one actually. Select table space name from DBA table spaces. Okay, now we will see that we have a header here. That's what this is, table space name. Let's say we didn't want that to be displayed. Well, that's controlled by an Sqlplus setting known as heading. So if we type in show heading, we will see the heading is currently on. But if we type in set heading off, like so, show heading, we will see that it's off. And this time when we do is select table space name from DBA table spaces, we do not get the table space underscore name, which is because that's a heading and we turn headers off. Okay, and if we did a set heading on again, show heading, and then I did our select, it's on again, and we see the column name, the table space underscore name column. Now there's another interesting Sqlplus setting called feedback. If we do show feedback, okay, we will see that the default value is feedback on for 6 or more rows. Now what that means is that there's 6 or more rows, not including the header here, but 6 or more rows, which is the column name, but 6 or more rows displayed in our SQL output, it's going to give us feedback and tell us how many rows there were. Okay, so if I type in select username from DBA users, which display all the users currently defined in our database, I know that that would be more than 6 rows. And as you can see, it does show it, 8 rows selected. Now, let's say that we wanted to turn feedback off, regardless of how many rows came back. Well, we could type in the following: set feedback off, show feedback. It's off. Now when we do is select username from DBA users, which we know is more than 6 rows being returned, we will see that we get all 8 rows, which are more than 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, but Sqlplus does not tell us about it, does not give us feedback of how many rows, because we turn that setting off. Now if we were to say set feedback on, like so, and we were to do a show feedback, by default it says on for 1 or more rows. So now when we do a select table space underscore name from DBA underscore table spaces, even though 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is only 5 rows, we still get that, we still get the feedback return because the default when you just hit on is 1. Okay, now if we wanted to specify the number of feedback of lines that would have to be returned in order for Sqlplus to give us feedback, we just type in set feedback 2, like so, 3 like so, which says that we need 3 lines or more in order to get feedback. Okay, so if we do select table space name from DBA table spaces, we get feedback because there's more than 3 rows. If we do select name from the $control file, we get feedback because there's 3 rows. Okay. If we do select open mode from the $database, we don't get any feedback because it's only 1 row. Of course, set feedback on is for 1 row. So now it will display feedback. But I don't want to get too deep into feedback because this is just about Sqlplus settings. Another interesting setting that you may be using, or useful setting I should say, is timing. And we do show timing, we see that by default it's off. Now if we do set timing on like so, show timing, we will see that timing has been set to on. And this is very useful if you want to time how long your SQL plus statements are running or how well they're performing. Now with computer performance, there's more than what we call wall time to determine if something's performing well. We got to look at other statistics: system time, kernel time, user response time, memory fetch time. There's way, are we paging? Are we not paging? There's way more in-depth things we can look at as computer analysts to determine if an SQL statement or if any program or task on a computer is performing optimally. But this just shows us the wall time, elapsed time to complete a task. Okay, so if we do select name from the $database, okay, that obviously completes pretty quickly. Okay, and we're showing that it completes in 4 milliseconds because that's just quick. Okay, and we have hour, we have minute, we have second, and we have millisecond. Okay. Now, if I were to do a longer one, execute a longer SQL statement, which is, for an example, select object underscore name from DBA objects, and what this select statement does is it interrogates the Oracle Data Dictionary, which is metadata about the database, and tells us all the objects are currently defined to an Oracle database, the default objects and the objects that we put in by our application or ad hoc layer or whatever. And there's a lot of objects, okay, a lot. All right, so this can take a considerable amount of time to execute. And objects can be views, users, tables, it doesn't matter. Okay, and as you can see, the output goes for quite some time because there's a lot of objects. And this is a pretty vanilla Oracle database. I don't have an application connected to it, and I only use it really for my videos. Well, videos where I don't connect applications to the database and do things like that. So this is just basically the metadata that I got by creating a database and running my cataloging cat-proc Oracle database creation scripts. So this is the basic vanilla Oracle database. And as you can see, there are a lot of objects created in the database. And I'll pause the video until this is done executing. Okay, and as you can see, this right here, the command I just ran that shows all the objects in the database completed in 40 seconds. Okay, and of course to turn timing off, 40 seconds and 14 milliseconds. To turn timing off, I do set timing off, show timing, select table space name from DBA table spaces, and we see that we're not getting a time statistic at the end of the command run now because we disabled that option. Okay, that's, and if you wanted to set any of these settings to be, because as I said before, once you log out and log back in, they're set to the defaults again. If you wanted to set any of them to be persistent, you could put them in the glogin file, which is located under Oracle Home /SQLplus/admin directory. And I do have a video on how to do that, make settings persistent, SQL Plus variables persistent. I think that's the name of the video. Yeah, make SQL variables persistent across SQL Plus sessions, and I talk about that. I don't want to duplicate efforts by showing you how to do that in this video too, so just refer to that video. Okay, all right. Those are SQL Plus options, and again, these options are not to be mistaken with database or instance level options, and or parameters, and they're just there to control the session of your Oracle database, whether to make the output more user friendly or to set preference settings that you may have as a DBA or a specific user at SQL Plus. Okay, thank you.